yes, I am a tech geek. I have been a tech geek all of my life, but I know that it is a combination of digital and traditional tools is where you see the benefit. Like students, kids, no one should be on a device all day long. And no one at this day and age should just only be utilizing traditional tools like paper and pencil and books. Kids need real books, they need paper and pencil, but they also need those digital tools in order to better prepare them for the society.
Welcome, everybody, back to another exciting episode of the Undisrupted Podcast. Adam, I was at a conference this week where there was a school district in Arkansas that's actually doing this thing where they allow the kids the choice as to whether they want to come to school in person, go to school virtually, or a combination of both. Like some days they could come in person, some days they could go virtually. What are your thoughts about that idea?
You mean to tell me adults are trying to give kids choice? What? Mind blown. That's a new concept to me. But I'm all for that. I've been one of those people with this whole pandemic situation that we have, this post-COVID, post-pandemic world, whatever you want to call it. We do need more choices. We do need more options because school can't look the way it's always looked. It didn't work for a lot of students. It's the virtual didn't work for all kids. What we're doing now is not working for all kids. So, I'm all for something different, trying out different things and seeing what works. I'd be curious to see how you can have that type format where kids can kind of pick and choose. I don't know. We got to, decide by the week, decide, each day. I don't know what that looks like because I can only imagine the teacher side not knowing who's going to be in your room that day when the kids are coming in. I don't know. That just kind of scares me.
Logistically, it could. I think there's a way to do it, but it would definitely take a lot of prep and like having basically two different spaces available, a virtual version of your room and the in-person version. I know here in Austin, we enrolled our kids in their virtual academy for one day, and then we pulled them and homeschooled them for the next 3 months. And I'm a big public school fan, and they're back in school, but it was during COVID, and it was just, I had real hope. It was like, you're going to have these amazing virtual teachers. They're not teaching both like hybrid concurrent or whatever at the same time, like in person and virtual at the same time, which was kind of a mess. And I was like, oh, this is going to be it. Which is also why I'm excited to invite our guest on today. So Carla Jefferson is the principal of a virtual academy at Darlington County School District in South Carolina. Carla, what are your thoughts on that idea of having virtual, non-virtual, mix, hybrid, choose your adventure every day?
Again, like Adam said, mind blown. I think the logistics of it initially terrified me, but I agree. There is no one mode of learning that works for everyone, and so I think it's important to provide homes and parents and children with choice. Um, I'm definitely going to Google that when I get off to see exactly what that looks like for them, and how that looks, in the long run too, as well. Obviously, I'm a fan of virtual learning, but I also know that it doesn't work for everyone. But we also know we have known for years that in-person learning doesn't work for everyone. And so, how do we provide the correct mode of learning? How do we tailor that to meet the needs of the families in our communities? I think that's really important.
You said a very important piece right there, the families in our communities, because the families in your community look different, have different needs than the families in my community, the family in Carl's community, all over. So that's one of those things that it's kind of, to steal Burger King, have it your way. It's literally going to have to look totally different because everybody's going to want it their way. Because heck, you have some schools in the Midwest or whatever where they're farming places where the virtual learning may look different for them based on the seasons, the crop rotations and all that kind of stuff. I just don't know how this could really look. But you have to try something to see how it could look. And I think that's where we kind of get stuck in education. We don't like trying a lot of different things. That's why everybody's been in such a rush to go back to the way things were before.
Yeah, but we all know the way things were before didn't work. I mean, So I don't understand the need for us to run back to an archaic system that was failing our communities. But again, you know,
There's
there's
comfort
so
in
many
what we
different
know, right?
layers to all of it.
Yeah.
Right.
We get comfortable with what we know. So you have a so I'm curious, like how do you I mean, first of all, this is one of those jobs that didn't exist probably 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, I would say. What's your origin story? What led you to become a principal of a virtual academy? And then like what's your background? How did you get there?
So it's really ironic because although virtual learning is new in a lot of places, of course it's not in others. And I have found colleagues that have been doing this for a multiple of years, and it looks different every single place. It's really interesting. So for me, I've been in education for 20, I think 25, this might be year 25 for me. And I started as a classroom teacher, spent some time as a school level administrator for students with disabilities. And then I've also spent time as an instructional technology coordinator for my school district. And so our program evolved. It was the brainchild of our superintendent, Dr. Tim Newman, as after we finished with that first like shut down COVID piece, and we knew that in South Carolina, we never closed, similar to probably other states. We shut down the beauty salons and the nail salons, but we kept the bars open. So
That sounds like Texas.
um,
Yeah.
so we knew that we were like there was no doubt that we would have to go back to some form of in-person learning. But our superintendent decided because he didn't want to lose our families who were afraid to return back to in-person learning because of the dangers of COVID. We decided to create a virtual academy for our school district. Because again, although new to us, not new to a lot of places, and what we know is that parents these days have options, and so they could choose other virtual programs that are available or homeschool programs that are available. And so we wanted to provide something that was comparable or in our minds a little bit better than that. Um, so initially we had the conversation about starting it, and I had indicated some interest in wanting to maybe transition over into a principalship. And so, since my superintendent knew that I was principal certified, he asked me if I would lead the initiative. And we expected about 10% of our families kind of buying in. Yeah, we ended up with 37%.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
um, for the year of 2020-21, the Darlington County Virtual Academy was the largest school in our school district with 3,700 students. Um, and so
Do you have a mascot? I mean, wait, I mean, do you like how does that work as a school? It's like I imagine all these students, but I mean, all the counselors, you have all the other I mean, I'm really curious, like, how does that all work with a person? Because you're a leader of academy, but they're in the schools. But do you have all the other things that schools get?
Do you have a mascot? It's like it's a router. Like their mascot a wireless router.
we are actually kind of working towards getting like a different type, but like lately our logo has just been like an iPad or a MacBook, like just uh, but so it was very interesting because initially when we thought it was going to be like maybe 1,000, 1,100 kids, we had already in my role we worked with teachers all across our district. There were three of us in that role at the time, and so we started pulling teachers that we knew we had worked with through our annual technology conference, through the professional development that we provided, with a list of teachers that we thought would be a good fit. And then the ante upped a lot, and so it got to the point where principals we looked at each percentage of the school. So if 45% of your students had signed on to be virtual academy, then we would take a percentage of those teachers, but the principals got a chance to choose. So we had a wide range of ability, even in like we so I have to say that we were in a very good place district wide. We had been one to one for probably about 3 years, really 5 years, K 12. had done take-home model with high school for the entire time, had started the take-home model with 3-8. And so, and we had, again, done a lot of professional development, but still it wasn't perfect. And of course, we know that that building level leadership dictates the way it's going to go, even with as much as support that is provided from district office. So there was a wide range there. And so we had, of course, kids all over, and it was, I want my child to be virtual, they're in virtual. And also we also managed larger class sizes because of the need to have social distancing and in person. So my kindergarten teachers had 35 kindergartners in their classroom. And the same all the way up. Middle school got as large as 40, 45, 47 in some places. And so a lot of it was determining how do we, like, you can't teach 35 kindergartners at a time. Like, there's just no way. And so the benefit of that, though, is that we really bought into the small group model and a flexible schedule for students within constraints, right? Because they needed time with their teacher, in these small groups, and they did some large group things. But we also wanted to be consistent with the schedule for them because this was so new to them, having to log on and off for on-screen and off-screen time, and then also conversations about. So yes, I am a tech geek. I have been a tech geek all of my life, but I know that it is the combination of digital and traditional tools is where you see the benefit. Like students, kids, no one should be on a device all day long. And no one at this day and age should just only be utilizing traditional tools like paper and pencil and books. Kids need real books, they need paper and pencil, but they also need those digital tools in order to better prepare them for the society. And so those were conversations that we had to have a lot. And also the fact that we were now teaching in homes, right? So I was a middle school teacher for about 14 years. I can promise you some of the things that I said in my classroom when it was just me and my group of kids, I can't say online
They're going to
I
record
have
you
a
with their
parent
phone.
over
Yeah.
my shoulder. Yeah, I mean, like they're right there and they're on the phone calling me. You need to get online. This so and so teacher. I don't like the way she's talking to kids, and so it was just like, and it was an ongoing conversation with everyone, with teachers about you all. Like, although this is not optimal, we have to be careful about what we say online, but also having conversations with parents saying you have to give teachers the ability to discipline and to manage their classrooms. And so in some cases, you may not like that they're telling Johnny to get up out the bed and sit at a kitchen table to do his work. But those are the expectations that we've set forth. And then going
Yeah,
back to
put the
teachers
rainbow high
saying,
doll down, put down your He-Man toy. It's
right. Put the dog out. No, it's not her time to feed the baby. She's supposed to be in class, those types of things. But it was definitely an opening experience. So of course, my teachers had a larger course load. It was me, and then I was also provided 3 assistant principals to help support. Um, and that's about it. So like we kind of I did have I was given a guidance counselor. um yeah, and that was probably about it. And so we worked, the 3 assistant principals and I was fortunate to have assistant principals who also had an understanding of at least curriculum and instruction and teaching and learning. And then we kind of worked together to build. Some of them were tech savvy, some of them were okay with tech, some of them, so there was also a range there. But we worked together as a really phenomenal team to try to meet the needs. And then we had support staff that really tracked kids.
With that, it seems as though that your district really put the emphasis on making it successful. Because what we've seen across the country is not everyone has really put their money where their mouth is, where as it pertains to a virtual learning program. It was like, okay, we're going to do this because we have to, but we really don't want it to succeed. It's almost like we're going to put up this little tent city for y'all to live in, but we don't necessarily want y'all to live there forever. That was kind of like what virtual learning looked in some cases, and I think as a disservice to the kids in the long run, because ultimately what the virtual learning they had at the height of the pandemic should be the worst virtual learning they ever had, because it should only get better. So with that being said, like what now, if you don't want to share, I get it. But what have you seen as far as like your student retention, like the kids being able to complete the program, coursework? Because I know for us, we struggled with some of the kids completing some of their coursework, and it was just like this mad dash toward the end of a quarter or a semester to get all their stuff done. So, how did you see that, or what were some ups and downs during that cycle that you can maybe share with our listeners?
The first year is undescribable because we just spent a lot of time tracking down students who just, I'm going to be perfectly honest, just did not have the necessary support in order to be successful. After that first year, my superintendent, our school board, they decided to move forward with the program, and that's where we really saw the shift, because we put it up under our Magna Innovative Programs umbrella. We created an application. We looked at grades, we looked at attendance, we looked at teacher recommendation. And so last year is what we call our like out of the flames Phoenix revamped year. And that has been extremely successful. We talked to parents. We did allow for parents, some of them to appeal, because based on the rubric system. And so we had a few, but we also consistently talked about parents about this being successful. One of the things that we implemented that first year and continued is we do parent-teacher conferences about every 2 to 3 weeks. Progress reports go home to parents every week. It is so important we make sure that every parent knows how to log into their parent SIS side of the SIS. We make sure that they all know how to check email frequently, so in some cases that may be them just checking their students' email or their own personal email. Like, we put a lot into work into providing advocacy for our parents and our families. And so for our younger students, they have to have a designated learning coach that is there with them. In some cases, that's a parent. It could be an aunt. It could be a grandparent. It could be a cousin, like whoever that is there consistently to help troubleshoot and provide support. And so if students are having difficulty, you may hear a teacher ask, who's your learning coach for today? Because sometimes that shifts because parents had to go back to work. So some days it may be grandmother, it may be dad because dad is off and his schedule is shifted. And then for our older ones, we do require a learning coach, but they don't have to be there with them. But they're the person that's contacted if there are questions and concerns. We have had a very successful year this year in virtual learning because we put down mandates and requirements. If I look at the end of the school year, if we look at like student growth, we use MAP as a measure. Our students, like 84% of our students, just showed growth in MAP from the previous year, from the beginning of this year to even the end of, just in this time frame. Our students, they are successful academically. So at the semester end, we do send students back who are unsuccessful. The first semester I may have sent, and so now we went from 3,700 to about 300. We probably sent back about 3 to 5% of that population. This year, we do give parents an option. They don't have to apply if they're already in virtual. They have to sign a commitment form. We have about 90% of our students that are back. And when I look at our middle school students for summer school, we only had 2 students that even were required to attend summer school just because of, not being successful. But again, that comes in a lot with the work, the support that we have, so we're not like necessarily per pupil funded, but because that takes away money from the homeschool that they may need right now, because they are the ones that are doing a lot of the work for the kids that were missing, right? The kids who didn't show up to class, they're not with us. They're back in their home school. But I can honestly say that anything that we've asked for in order to be able to support our students, we've gotten. And so even though we are a fully virtual program, we have what we call in-person learning days. So our students come in once a month for in-person hands-on activities that tie into the content. They come in for mandatory testing. And then we also provide like what we want to create is like a public school, homeschool type equivalent. So we have social events. We have a spring fling. We did the fifth and eighth grade promotion ceremonies. We do trunk or treat. We do during Thanksgiving and the winter holidays. We do food drives to support our local community. And so, and so when I talk to other virtual programs that have been around for a while, some schools have their kids come in once a week. Um, right now with gas being $4.61 a gallon,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna ask any parent, to that's just a lot to ask, knowing that for some in some reasons there are a lot of reasons why parents choose virtual. In some cases it could have been health concerns. Some of it is they just don't fit in that in-person, learning. But some of it is, like just saving money, by being home. But as a school district, we fund all of their needs, that we're providing the devices and all those tools. And so, but we have found like those are things, even for parents who have decided that they're sending their kids back to in person. It's, like we ask as they leave, like what are some ways that we can make it better? And they all say, just keep doing what you're doing. A lot of it was just the social interaction piece that they felt like their child was missing, that we aren't able to provide, as much on a daily basis, but that also gives us some ideas for next year, to create like additional social events. So like our in-person days were academic, but moving on to field trip opportunities, pride night opportunities where the kids have dances, things where the kids just have to come back, because it took us a while. It took us probably until October, November to say this is not the COVID school. This is a school for children who thrive successful in a virtual environment. And making that shift, was probably one of the most difficult things that we had to do and are kind of continuing to do to change that narrative.
Yeah, that's always that weird thing, because I know for us here in my system, we have a program called Rise, and it's our alternative school. And we had to try to shake the alternative school label, because yes, we do send kids that have some discipline tribunal issues, and they end up going to that program because they can't exist in their normal environment. But it's an alternative learning program. So we also, just pre-pandemic, for those students who, in some cases, some of our seniors or juniors who may have become early parents, that program worked for them, because the regular traditional school day, those hours just didn't work. We had some students that you kind of mentioned have parents that they kind of are their primary healthcare provider in home for them in some cases, and so that kind of environment worked for them, or they just didn't like being in a regular school day. They just didn't. The confines of a 7 to 4, 7 to 3 school just didn't work for them. So that kind of program where they kind of could come in, do some stuff on on the computer, get some one-on-one help with a teacher, and go back home and complete the rest, work for them. So, I commend you on definitely that effort on trying to change the label from it being the quote unquote COVID school to a true virtual learning program. And I know you're going to really excel in that, because you have a lot on your plate in addition to that.
Yeah.
Because you're also
I'm excited
a
about
member
this.
of a national organization.
Yeah, I am now talking to 2 new ISTE board members. They've been on new board members. I can still say that, right? You're still in year 1, so technically correct. So I'm going to
Yeah.
ask both of you this question. I don't usually get this opportunity, so I'm going to ask you both this. What's and you don't have to spill all the dirt, although I do want to hear it, but not right now, because we are recording this, and I don't want you all to get in trouble for your volunteer job or get fired from it, because Adam knows what it's like to get fired from a volunteer job. Sorry. Oh, too soon.
With that being said, and for those of you at home, I'm holding up my policy and governance for a board member that they gave all of us to make sure that we read through. So as Carla's answering questions, I'll make sure she's not violating any of the ISTE board policies here.
And that book is still wrapped in plastic, folks. Okay, so the question is, the question is, what Yeah, just give it just real quick because we're near the. I don't want to spend too much time on this because again, we want people to get excited about it too. What's something that you were surprised about? Both of you are surprised about terms of how something like an ISTE board works because it's pulling people from all over the country really. But there's a central organization that's based out of I guess Oregon, and of course they run the conference, which is a big part of their organization too. So what was something you were like kind of surprised about when you became an ISTE board member?
I wouldn't necessarily say surprised. I think, but what Adam shared, that Carver governance policy, that is really interesting because when you think about boards and the power of boards, and how different that looks using that Carver, governance policy. But I also think I go back and if we look at it, it's a lot like the way school boards should act. Like they should, like if he hired Richard to be our CEO, we should trust him to make the best decisions for ISTE, and he has done a phenomenal job with that. School boards hire a superintendent. They should trust that superintendent that they hired to run that district. And I don't want to sound insensitive or anything, and because I'm not necessarily talking about school board members in general. Some of this relates to legislature, but I have
And
difficulty with
definitely not talking
people.
about your current school system. We want to make
No,
sure all the listeners
oh
out there,
yeah,
not her new school district, not my school district. We're not talking about our current employers
no,
who sign our
I am
paychecks.
very blessed. Yeah,
Disclaimer.
yeah, I am very blessed, and I will say this that may not make it into the podcast. I have a phenomenal superintendent, and we also have a phenomenal school board that really wants to do what's best for children. And I know that does not happen in a lot of places, and so a lot of times I look at the train wrecks that are now available on Facebook Live and
Yeah.
YouTube of other school districts,
Yes.
and I think, gosh, like why do you hire someone but you don't trust them to run, and so to run the district, because they have a proven record in most cases. My superintendent, he knows what he's doing. He has a vision, and I'm lucky enough to have a school board that trusts him in that vision. But it's also, we know, it's a balance between the overall community too, right? And it's that political game that they have to play. And so I think that not a surprise, because I've read about Carver and understood it, but it's really like, we really have no power. Like, I can promise you, we can't get you free tickets into any
Oh, come on.
event.
I want to be a
we're,
keynote
we're
speaker.
not
I
throwing
want to be the
out
keynote speaker. Come on.
we're not exactly. We're not throwing out free keynotes and to everybody, but it's the opportunity that we have as ISTE board members to talk about our passion for the organization, and to be key ambassadors for the organization. And I think that's the part that I love the most. Like, those of us who are on the board have a fairly long-standing relationship with ISTE, have always believed in the work that ISTE does, and being on the board just kind of, puts you on another level to be able to advocate for the work that they do and to spread that knowledge a little further.
I definitely appreciate the fact that you guys are volunteering your time for this because you are a conduit into school districts. You're basically the lens of which ISTE needs to be seen because you both have boots on the ground in two different spaces. Adam, I'm going to ask you the same question and then I'll have you wrap us up. But any surprises for you? Because I haven't really got to ask you much. You've sent me some texts and I've seen some pictures when you guys were touring something in DC at some point or something or other. But I haven't, like, what's a surprise for you as an ISTE board member? Anything surprising?
Well, it's just the size of the organization. I mean, it's just a whole, as Carla mentioned, it's more than just the conference. I mean, there's so many branches of ISTE, and it does so much work on so many different levels that you kind of, from someone who, if you're familiar with ISTE standards and the conference, that's a small piece of everything that ISTE's involved in and that it does. So that was one of those things, as becoming a board member, kind of seeing behind the curtain a little bit more. It's kind of like, oh, wow. ISTE does that too. Okay, cool. and then also getting a chance to work with some of the awesome people on the board and growing my skill set as well. That's just one of those things that's kind of like, oh, okay. There's some really, really awesome people know really a whole lot of stuff, and I get to learn from them as well and grow my knowledge base. I get to work with Carla on projects and stuff. So, really happy to do that stuff as well. So, got a pretty good board president and all that stuff. So yeah, good deal. So, Carla, last thing we're going to do before we get off of here, I want to ask you something that we ask all of our guests as they come onto our podcast. This is the hardest question, actually. This is the one that some people just say, don't air my episode because I can't answer this question. So get ready for it. With everything that we've had going on in the world and with this new position, making this transition, what do you do to keep yourself undisrupted?
To be perfectly honest, the fact that I have my family, my husband is so supportive of the work that I do. My daughter, who is actually a student in my program, so that's very interesting because when I go in to observe, she'll send me a message. Hello, Mrs. Jefferson. But also, my mother is actually the learning coach for my daughter because my husband and I both work. So like they along with like other friends and family are definitely a staple. But also the fact that my superintendent and my board are so supportive of the work that we've done and have allowed me to pretty much push my vision on this entire program without a lot of curbing or changing. I appreciate that. I have phenomenal principal colleagues that I work with that have my back that I can call and ask any question. And then it's just also like just being able to be myself, no matter where I am. I work with the most phenomenal teachers on this planet. They are rock stars because they put their all into this work every single day. And so like I love being able to develop this program. I love that kids come in because their faces make kids make everything better. So seeing them when they come in once a month, or sometimes more frequently, being able to see them and talk to them, that definitely makes it all worthwhile. It's not easy. This is hard work. Anybody that's in education knows. But I mean, like I got a chance to handpick my teachers, my faculty. I got a chance to handpick my students, for the most part, as we look at, because of that. But just everybody allowing me to be myself, and just providing support whenever needed. It's made it a phenomenal experience. Now, that first year, my assistant principals and I laughed. Like, the fact that we didn't stroke out is like a testament to itself. Like, how many times did we just want to be like, I'm out?
I'm out.
We came back. Everybody came back the next day and the next and the next. So it's been a phenomenal journey. I can absolutely say that.
Well, the students there in your school district are definitely a benefit of that journey of you and your team. And I want to thank you for joining the show. She's Carla Jefferson, everybody. You can follow her on Twitter. I didn't say this at the beginning, but you're Mrs. Jeff to you. Is that correct? Your Twitter?
That's
yes.
Right. That's me.
It's MRSJEFF, the number 2, and you on Twitter. So check her out on Twitter. Follow her and all the amazing work that she's doing there. And want to thank all of you for joining us and the listeners out there. Be sure to subscribe. Give us a review. We'd appreciate it. We might even give you a shout out on a future show. This has been the Undisrupted Podcast brought to you by Future Ready Schools. He's Adam, and you could follow his OnlyFans account at Adam's Knuckles because I almost forgot it in this episode.
Yes. You got to see the knuckles.
There we go. Or on Twitter at AskAdam3.
People are actually going to start looking for that for real. And he's Carl. My number one supporter of my OnlyFans. And you can follow him at Mr. Hooker. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, we are better together.
And we are better.
Undisrupted.